Just choose one thing to move toward and then just go with the path and you'll end up somewhere. But if you stand here trying to decide what to do, you'll still be here in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. Just choose something you kind of like and don't hate, and then start moving toward it, and you'll find that the course and path of life will bring you exactly where you're supposed to be. There's that saying, it's the sand in the oyster that creates the pearl. So it was just being really lonely, both in my household and in school, feeling alienated, feeling like I didn't belong. And then one day I discovered books. And it brought me into this world where it was just fascinating, it was adventurous, it was exciting, it was connecting, and became more exciting than school. I recently got like a box of my old school writings. And I saw that in 2nd grade, I wrote, you know, when I grow up, I want to be a writer. And I want to own 1 million books and have a kid and teach him how to ride a bicycle. That was the entire essay. Wow. And I'm almost there. Once I teach my son how to ride a bicycle, my life is done and complete.
What was the first time that your writing connected with people, with the world?
I was in Chicago at a Public Enemy Sonic Youth concert, and there was a riot outside. And it was misreported in all the press about what was going on with the riot, and I had like the only article, because I was there and talked to everybody that was really accurate about it, and I saw the article being mentioned on the news and editorials about it, and I realized that it was important to be somewhere, see it with your own eyes, talk to everybody, and tell the truth when it wasn't being told. Here's my advice. Just choose anything. It doesn't even matter. Just choose anything. This is you, right? And you're like, I don't know what to do. Choose frigging anything. Let's just say, oh, I want to be an actor. Just, who cares? Maybe you don't. I don't know. Just choose one thing. So you choose one thing and now you have a goal, right? Just choose a goal. It doesn't matter. And now maybe you're going to start going to auditions. You're going to auditions. And then, wait, you got a job, but it's a voiceover work. It's or maybe it's on radio. You get a little radio gig, right? So now you're like, oh, radio's fun. I'm going to be a radio host, and that's your next goal. And then you get a call to do like a voiceover on a cartoon or something here, and you're like, okay, I'll be a cartoon voice. And guess what? Now you're actually moving, and maybe you will end up being the voice of whatever, on the next Pixar movie or something like that. Just choose one thing to move toward, and then the path, and then just go with the path, and you'll end up somewhere. But if you stand here trying to decide what to do, you'll still be here in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. Just choose something you kind of like and don't hate, and then start moving toward it, and you'll find that the course and path of life will bring you exactly where you're supposed to be.
You've sort of arrived at these different approaches to writing. What was the first, to your mind, like the first writing piece that you did that kind of put you on the map? Where not like I've arrived, but you're like, okay, I actually could make this work, or I could actually really be good at this, or wow, I just got recognition for this piece. I mean, were there any sort of defining moments in your career as a writer?
Yeah, if you want to live in your passion, whatever your passion is, you have to be willing to not make money at it. If you want to do what you love, you have a choice. You can choose money, or you can choose what you love. Joseph Campbell has a great quote that I always use. I don't know if you guys know this.
Joseph Campbell, so the hero with 1,000 faces.
Yeah, the great kind of professor of mythology. But he said the insecure, have you guys heard this? The insecure way is the secure way. You guys have heard that quote? And what it means basically is, my parents, and I'm sure like most people's parents, say, get a good job, try and make some money, make a good living.
Yeah.
And because they think that's secure if you go and make money. But if you do a job and you make money and you lose that job, then you lose the money and you have nothing.
Right.
What he says is, if you choose your passion, lose money, because you're always going to have your passion be happy, so it doesn't actually matter.
And that's your safety net.
Right. But the challenge of that is that it might be 8 years or 4 years before you're actually making a living at it. Versus something else. Here's the secret to life. Don't take it personally. Not just for pickup, but for life in general. Everyone's a jerk to you someday, and someone's an asshole on the street and bumps into you and says, F off, it's not about you, it's, he's a jerk. If you have a day and you lose your job and your girlfriend breaks up with you and you crash your car, the world doesn't hate you, you just had a bad day. So, same thing. It'll make life so much easier if you don't take it personally, which means that as you go in this world, your friends are not going to tell you the truth about the things that are really wrong with yourself. So, as you enter this world and you talk to guys, you're going to find out what your problems are and what they aren't. When they tell it to you, don't take it personally, you think about it. And you've got to have this filter inside. I think this is what allowed me to excel. You have to have this filter inside that takes in all criticism, not personally and not judgmentally. You take in the criticism, you think, is that true? And you take a hard look at yourself. And if it's true, you work to solve it and change it. If it's not true, you just throw it out and move out. Because you go there, we're here because we're admitting we need something better in our lives. We're here because we're admitting we're a little bit broken, There's something we need to learn we haven't. So as you do it, you want to take in all the criticism that comes in and work on what you need to work on. So don't take it personally.
How do you think of yourself? How do you describe yourself? And I think about this because words matter, and I know that we're all becoming a bunch of hyphens. I call myself a photographer, a director, an entrepreneur. I'm getting tired of it. How do you describe yourself?
I mean, if I had to say like one thing, maybe it would be a storyteller. I just like to tell really great, compelling stories that if it's a book, you can't put it down. If it's a movie or a TV show, you can't turn it off. So to me, it's the art of storytelling, which I think is probably one of the oldest human art forms there is.
Yeah, caveman times,
Right.
like sitting around the fire, and even like that's what cave paintings are, right?
Yeah.
They're scratching out a story.
And I always encourage people, and this is probably true for people listening right now, that people love to read nonfiction. They want to get a book that's going to tell them what to do and a bulleted list of what they are supposed to do. But I really believe that the mind learns through metaphor, right? The storytelling is to learn how you learn the rules of your tribe or your culture or the world, or about being a human being. You learn through metaphor, and I really think we undervalue storytelling in this like quick fix culture. You know, I'm very methodical about time management because it's so hard to do. So the first thing, I'll give you a couple of important life-changing tips for anyone trying to do something creative on the computer. So number one thing is no email in the morning. Like number one thing is there's a program called Freedom that I downloaded. And it says, I love the word freedom because that's really what it is. It says, how many minutes of freedom do you want? You say whatever it is, 90 minutes, and then you cannot access the internet for 90 minutes. There's no unlock code. People are gasping, you're all going to use it. Yeah, there's no unlock codes. The first thing I do is phone, I give it to someone else, or put it in a drawer somewhere. It's best if I give it to someone else. Internet goes off. And I commit to that a certain amount of time. So my thing is that it's compartmentalizing. If you're going to check your email, check it from 4 to 5. Someone wrote a book which I never read, but it's called Never Check Your Email in the Morning. The thing is, with time, is to become proactive about time instead of reactive, because I know so many people, you can't do anything because you're getting a message on Facebook, and then you're getting an email, and then you're just reacting to that because it feels like you're getting something done. At the end of the day, you got nothing done. Yeah. So what my thing is, and everyone knows that I'm proactive about that to the degree that, by the way, I have Facebook and Twitter blocked on my computer. Yep. What I did is I downloaded Intego Content, I think it's Contentberry, whatever it is. Yeah, and I had someone else put in their password for those sites. So I didn't even know the password, so I couldn't get to Twitter or Facebook if I tried. So finding those things that are those and putting walls between you and them or limiting them in certain ways. There's one other thing I was going to say was friends can be a pain in the ass if we're trying to be creative. And if you have more than 7 friends and everyone wants to see you one day a week, what do you do? Yeah. So another thing I want to say is that I do a Wednesday night dinner party. Yeah. So if my friends want to see me, I'm like, great, Wednesday. If someone wants a meeting who I'm not sure about, Wednesday night. So Wednesday night, we all go to a restaurant and basically whoever I want to see or catch up on, I'll see them there, and then maybe afterward I'll break off with my closer friends. But that way, I can see everyone, people who I want to meet with, but I don't want to really take the time for a lunch or meeting one-on-one. I just bring them there. If I like them, I talk to them a bunch. If I don't, I put them far away. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about you. They don't care about your thoughts. They don't care about your ideas. They don't care about what you have to say, what you did yesterday, or anything. They do not give a shit. And from there, can you make them care? Everything I write, I assume that nobody cares, that they have no interest. And if I start from that perspective, and if I can draw you in through the writing, that's where the story begins. So just start by assuming nobody cares, and how can you draw them into your story or your point? Number 2 then, one way to draw them in is something called open loops. So an open loop is, if I can start with something that captures your attention, and 98% of you didn't know what an open loop is, you're probably curious about it by now because I've been talking for 2 minutes and still haven't explained it yet, right? An open loop is at the top. Can I tell you something that you're interested in and you want to know the answer to, and wait till the end? How many times have we just stayed through a really shitty movie just so we want to know what happens at the end, right? It can be the worst movie ever, but I want to know how that happened. So one is to use the idea of open loops, and it's true in relationships. You meet somebody you have a lot of common with, and you start telling all these stories, you want it to continue. So an open loop is a great way to create intrigue, because we're creatures who love storytelling, right? Early, and storytelling is part of our our DNA. So creating open loops at the top of a post or in a book is really powerful. You have to learn from your mistakes. I have this attitude that no situation is impossible. There is nothing impossible. They're just contingencies and obstacles to get around. So if I went out and I'm just trying to think of obstacles. Let's just say you did an opener and she'd heard it already. You did your line, she heard it already. because your friend just approached you with it 10 minutes ago. Do you run screaming? Maybe that happens the first time. The second time you say, if that happens again, what do I do? You say, oh my God, you must have met my friend. That's really funny. We were just talking about that. Bam, problem solved. Whatever it may be, any problem has a solution. So I kind of have that attitude. You know, what if she's with 8 guys? What if, she is on her way out the door? Any problem is going to have a solution. So you have to have that attitude. And if something goes wrong, and I'm saying this in a positive way, not a negative self-esteem way, but if something goes wrong, it's always your fault. That's what I feel like. Without being hard on myself, if something goes wrong, it's never her fault. She's not a bitch. She is not mean. She is not uptight. I did something wrong to make her uncomfortable. So, for example, with the openers, I would start walking up and saying, hey guys, I want to get an opinion on something. I got this question I'm trying to ask, and I'd start asking it. But I noticed they weren't really listening. They were tuning me out. They were kind of giving me bad body language. So I realized, what are they thinking? Why is that happening? Well, it's happening because I'm standing around. They don't know when I'm going to leave. So I added what's called a time constraint. I'd walk in, I'd say, hey guys, I want to get a quick opinion on something. By the way, I can only stay for a second because I got to rejoin my friends over there. Problem solved. So anytime something went wrong, or was I coming up, maybe I would do everything and I felt like I was doing it perfectly, but people weren't interested. Well, I was doing all the right things, but I was doing it in a very needy way. A lot of people will read the material and they'll say this doesn't work. Everything works. What I say is going to be different than what Zan says and different than what someone else says. It all works. You just have to do it right. So for example, the opinion openers we're talking about. An opinion opener is how you start a conversation. If you go and you say, can I ask you a question on something? And then they say, no, we're talking, get lost. Well, the opinion openers don't work. You just did it wrong. You walk in and you say, hey guys, I want to ask a quick question on something. Now you haven't asked them a yes, no question, and it's going to work. So there's so many little subtleties. Did that make sense? Okay. So there's so many, I saw someone looking at me strangely. So there's so many little subtleties that you have to work in, and it's always going to be your fault if it's not working. Not in a negative way, not in being hard on yourself. It's feedback so you can improve yourself. That whole idea that there's no such thing as failure, but only learning lessons. So that's what I did. But you know what? I'm a guy who's hard on myself, but I'm hard on myself because it makes me excel, usually.
What do you think about the state of the media today?
It's such an interesting world, not just these last few months, but the last few years. We've gone from a place where the news was like loss leader. It was, a network's obligation to do the news. They didn't make much money off it, but they reported the news. And then we went to a place where news is entertainment and news is partisan agendas. And the more fear you get, the more media conglomerates profit. Now we're literally always getting the news every second, and it feels more immediate, it creates more fear. And on top of that, you're surrounding yourself with a thought bubble of just people who agree with you, and it's just distorting people's view of reality. And the scary thing is there's less dialogue and there's less room for opposing viewpoints to exist in the same space.
What are some of the big issues facing the world today?
Here's the deal. Do you know how few people die of terrorism a year versus how many die of smoking? How many people die of suicide? How many people die of obesity? The biggest thing, over 100-fold, that anyone listening to this has to worry about for their own lives is themselves. We're sitting here talking about a lot of the issues and the problems in the world. And I think it's because we don't take our own emotional and psychological health seriously as a culture. We go to doctors for checkups for our health, for our physical health. We go to school for intellectual education, but we do nothing for our emotional and psychological health. And I guess if there's one thing I would love to see in the world, it's start to take our emotional and psychological health and teaching that intelligence early, because I believe that the secret to world peace is healthy parenting. I talked to geneticists because I was curious, how stuck are we with ourselves? And they said there is nothing in your behavior that is purely genetic. Everything is turned on by something in the environment, even schizophrenia and psychopathy. But healthy parenting, that's what I'd love to see in the world.
What do you think about the future?
I collect old books, and if I showed you a book from 1600 and 1700, just by looking, you probably wouldn't know the difference what was printed 100 years from later. The technology didn't change. But now change is happening so rapidly. You look at, say, the iPhone 1 versus the iPhone 7. These science fiction dreams are all in motion. So there's this amazing world that's being built and constructed. And everything that brings us closer to our own epiphany as human beings also brings us closer to our own destruction. So the question is,
which way are we going to turn as a society, and how can you and I and everybody bring things toward wholeness, togetherness, betterment, growth, positivity, and taking care of each other and the planet.
What are some of the biggest lessons you've learned in your life?
Let go of your own story. Let go of the lies you tell yourself. That belief that I'm not enough, I don't fit in. And these didn't come from us. These came from emotionally abusive parent, caregiver, someone else. You know, whether you're 15, 20, 30, 40, that's a lot of years with living with that belief. So it's a process that might take years for you to tell yourself the opposite long enough. If you can see that your story is not truth, if you can see that it was someone else loading you up with their own baggage, and if you can let go of that story and be the parent to yourself that you never had, you can then, embrace the world and embrace life. So I think the biggest lesson I learned is the inner world is a garden to be cultivated. And I love a quote from Bob Dylan who said, I'm never arriving, I'm always becoming. And so that's one of my goals, is just to continue the process of becoming.
And we're flying so close to where we belong. And we're trying to go somewhere new.